Can you believe I've been doing this channel for 2 years and I've never reviewed a Wolverine figure before? Well, bub, let's get this show on the road. Welcome to 5 Points of Articulation, where I review action figures and then articulate 5 points to help you decide if you want to add that figure to your collection. The 5 points I discuss are packaging, presentation, posability, playability, and price. I'm Jason, and if you enjoy my content, please like, share, subscribe, do all the YouTube rigmarole. Today, I'm taking a long overdue look at a Logan figure with the Marvel Legends retro card training uniform Wolverine. Starting off with the packaging, and this is actually a very close approximation of the original card. The Wolverine pose is pretty much the same, except for the fact that the original picture had the brown costume instead of this one. Wolverine suits up with a new X-Men team to take on the world's greatest threats to mutant kind. The only other figures I've personally picked up from this wave are Avalanche and Spiral. I'm happy enough with my Mojo World Longshot, though I may get Dark Phoenix just because of the updated articulation. As a tribute to the original card, which somehow manages to improve on that card by being more accurate to the product, for packaging, I'm giving Wolverine 1 whole point. Moving on to presentation, Wolverine stands at 5 3/4 inches. If that seems short, in the comics, Wolverine's only 5'3". Although not the first Wolverine figure ever made, this was the very first Wolverine figure I ever had. It carries a lot of sentimental value to me, and even though it's far from my favorite Wolverine costume, it hits the nostalgia buttons more than just about any modern Wolverine figure has. For the most part, this is the same basic Wolverine body we've seen since 2016. Obviously, he has a new belt, new gloves which are actually sculpted, new thighs which are actually sculpted, and new boots which are actually sculpted. Compared to older figures with leg straps that constantly flopped around, this is a huge improvement. This Wolverine is also pinless. Otherwise, the most important new piece is the head. We'll be looking at other Logan heads later, but for my money, this might just be the best. The argument could be made that he looks a bit shiny, but hey, it is a training uniform. Maybe he's just sweaty. He does usually fight without sleeves after all. That yellow and blue training suit is the most noteworthy thing about this figure. In general, I'd say it's painted fairly cleanly. I'd also like to commend Hasbro for actually sculpting the X on the belt buckle. As always with Wolverine, the most questionable part are the claws. Out of the package, they're always a bit crooked and need repositioning. I think we can at least all agree that it is a big step up from these. I consider this Wolverine to be a kind of transition figure. They could have easily saved a few bucks and painted an old Wolverine with some floaty straps, but they didn't. They gave him unique costume pieces and pinless joints that we're going to be seeing, I'm sure, for years to come. They also gave us an incredible new head sculpt that I suspect is going to be the standard moving forward. For presentation, I'm giving this Wolverine 1 whole point. Moving on to posability, and while this might be an oldish body, I'm still excited to test the range of one of these on camera. From the top in Wolverine's head and a ball joint and a disc hinge, up this far, which is fantastic, and despite the fact that there are so few characters shorter than him, he can really bury the chin, some tilt, and all the way around. Clickety swivel hinge shoulders raised just over 90 degrees, forward and back with a butterfly joint, bicep swivel, again, pinless double jointed elbows, and swivel hinge wrists. They can hinge up this high and down that low. Shifting the torso, and Wolverine has an ab crunch and a waist swivel. He can arch back this far, and hunch forward this far. No tilt of course, but he can twist. Below the big red X buckle belt, Wolverine has ball jointed hips. They can kick this high, and split this wide. Traveling down the leg, he has thigh cut nicely hidden by the strap. Again, pinless double jointed knees. Pretty good range there. Boot cut, again nicely hidden by the strap. And Marvel Legends ankles that can hinge and pivot. For all the complaints I hear about Marvel Legends reusing bodies, I very seldom ever hear people complain about Wolverine. It's a real testament to what a good job Hasbro did with him. Now that he's pinless, a good figure has only gotten better. For posability, I'm giving Wolverine 1 whole point. Moving on to playability, and in addition to the static head we've already looked at, he also comes with this growly one that I like even better. Mainly because that's what the original toy had. While I didn't get mine from Hasbro until about a week ago, this figure is technically considered a 2022 release. This figure incidentally came out in 1992. Putting them side by side, and these two figures represent 30 years of action figure evolution. The original had spring-loaded retractable claws. This one simply has alternate fists. For as many years as Hasbro's been giving us some version of this figure, I'd really like to see them expand to some gestury hands. I'd also really like to see some effects for the claws, like lightning or sparks or something like that. But playability is more than just accessories or the accessories you wish you had. It's also about how well your figure plays with others, because if there's one thing Wolverine is famous for, it's playing well with others. For some of my Wolverines, and once again, here we have that original. Here we have a battle-damaged Wolverine made in 1995. This one, however, is a repaint from a later gift pack. Next up, and here we have Weapon X from Age of Apocalypse. Despite the fact that it's a 5" giant scale figure, somehow his head is bigger than the new one. This Wolverine is from the 1996 Light Up series. After that, we got Wolverine in his patch disguise. This figure seemed to cement the basic body structure that Toy Biz would give Wolverine for the next few figures. For example, here we have Ninja Wolverine. This one has bone claws. And then in 1997, we got this Wolverine as part of the Water Wars series. This was pretty much my main Tiger Stripe Wolverine figure. Also in 1997, we got the Monster Armor Wolverine. Sadly, I no longer have his Monster Armor pieces. Even sadder, I don't have another proper Wolverine to show you until 2009's Marvel Select. As for my other Marvel Legends Wolverines, those are going to wait for a bit later. That said, for some Wolverine villains, and here we have his former flame, Lady Deathstrike. You found me beautiful once, baby. You got real ugly. The Marvel Legends Cyber, the Marvel Select 90 Sabretooth, the Marvel Select Classic Sabretooth, and the Marvel Legends Classic Sabretooth. Of course, for some fellow X-Men, and here we have the retro card Cyclops. This is the costume he was wearing at that time in the comic, but here's the 90s style Love Triangle 3-pack version to show off the perils of floating leg pieces. Though not exactly era appropriate, here we have Jean! For a few other X-Men getting the training uniform figure treatment, here we have Jubilee. Technically speaking, she's 2 inches taller than Wolverine, so the scaling here is correct. Here we have Gambit, this one's a retro card, Storm, also the retro card, and Psylocke. Having stole Psylocke's belt, and here we have Shadowcat, aka Kitty Pryde. Here we have Rogue. An 80s version is on the way, but what we really need is the Savage Land. Here we have Nightcrawler, Beast, Professor Xavier. I put him in this wheelchair because it's a bit more era appropriate, and Colossus. One fastball special coming up. For some other X-villains, and here we have Mystique, the White Queen, Magneto, the Master of Magnetism, Nathaniel Essex, also known as Mr. Sinister. As I patiently await the Marvel Select version, here we have the Apocalypse Build-A-Figure. And speaking of Build-A-Figures, here we have Juggernaut. Since this costume is from a story arc where the X-Men were flying around with the Shi'ar, here we have Gladiator. For a relative scale comparison, here's Pizza Spidey and the Spectacular Spider-Man, who I'm sure you're happy to see back safe and sound. And as always, here's Wolverine with Stealth Iron Man. If only I was made out of adamantium, then maybe this would have never happened. Yeah, but then you would have been put back on the shelf and forgotten. Instead, you've become a beloved character in an ongoing review series. Thanks, man. That's surprisingly encouraging coming from you. What can I say? I'm the best there is at what I do, bub, and what I do best is lift people's spirits. I thought what you did best was kill people. I mean, that usually lifts somebody's spirits. And now for what you've all been waiting for, head swaps. First up, and here we have the 2016 brown and orange costume. The head feels a bit loose, but it looks great. And the good news is that because of the shared body, the proportions are perfect. Unsurprisingly, the snarly head looks great as well. Hasbro reissued that figure not long after on a retro card with a slightly lighter color scheme. They also included this unmasked head, which for the time was okay. I do like the 5 o'clock shadow, and for anyone who's curious, here's how that old head looks on this new figure. Next up, and here we have the Love Triangle 3-pack. Strictly speaking, this was released previously as part of the Apocalypse Wave. The blue was brighter, but the yellow was a lot darker, so this one's just my personal preference. The skin tones aren't a 100% match, but there's a lot of shading in the arms which cover that, and honestly, this looks so good, who cares? Other way around, and again, I love it. And even though it's not accurate at all to the comic, I always wondered how this would look. If you wanted to do this, the yellows aren't a perfect match, but close enough. This was another Wolverine that came with an unmasked head, and I gotta say I never cared for this one. But again, if you're curious, here you go. For a very similar figure, and here we have the first appearance version from the Hulk vs. Wolverine box set. This one is notable for a much brighter blue, smaller shoulder pads, and of course the belt buckle without an X. I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say Wolverine might not have achieved the same level of fame as he did if he had to keep wearing this mask. I usually combine this body with the 3-pack head whenever I want a giant-sized X-Men version of Wolverine. The addition of this head, however, adds a lot of versatility. Same, of course, with this. Moving on to Age of Apocalypse, and I have to say I love the fact that they did not shy away from how big and crazy his hair was. The skin tones are shockingly a perfect match. As for me, I think I prefer the big crazy hair. Maybe not so much with this body, but it was still worth a look. Here we have House of X. I'm pretty happy to see a return to the brown costume. Logan does look a bit older in this comic, but I still think these heads are a great fit. And speaking of the brown costume, that brings us to my final Wolverine, the Amazon 5-pack. The best part about this head is that it's clearly cut from the same cloth as the new ones, meaning you can use this head on the new body and it would be right at home. The 5-pack also came with this scraped up head, which looks really good on this body too. Other way around, and not only do the new heads match the style of this body, but the skin tones match as well. This Wolverine is a precursor to 2 box sets that let you recreate the team as they appeared on the cover of X-Men 275. Even without that to look forward to, this is a fun little figure, and honestly, it's worth it just for the head swaps. For playability, I'm giving Wolverine 1 whole point. This leaves us with nothing left to discuss but the price. Wolverine, along with the rest of the retro card wave, retails for $24.99. With nothing else packed in the bubble but a couple of fists we've gotten a bunch of times and an extra head, that does seem kinda steep. That said, between the extra costume flourishes and the pinless joints, there is a surprising amount of new tooling here. And that's to say nothing about these really good head sculpts. Personally, I think this figure's worth it just for the heads. That said, if all you want him for is the heads, maybe wait for him to go on clearance. Either way, I'm excited to complete this version of the team and for the potential of these new pinless joints moving forward. And in conclusion, this Wolverine is a cut above the rest. Even so, for price, I'm giving Wolverine 0 points for a grand total of 4 out of 5. Maybe you want to rethink that, bub. Okay. For price, I'm giving Wolverine half a point for a grand total of 4.5 out of 5. That's more like it. If you like this video, check out one of these. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back again real soon, but until then, play nice and have fun.